thank you very much for sitting down with me today to do one of the first Tuxedo Revolt video interviews. We'll have some podcasts coming up, and I may actually take the audio from this interview and turn it into a podcast. Say hi to our viewers.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be sitting here with you.
This is Astrid Baumgardner, certified career coach and personal friend and music advice extraordinaire. She's a great force in the music professional world these days. And so sitting down today with some questions, and I have to admit, usually when I'm sitting on this couch getting advice, I'm the one who's not coming up with the dialogue. So it was a little bit challenging trying to think of, some questions to ask. But I think the jumping off place for today is the music world is changing. We all know this. The trends are changing. And what's one thing you see when people come in here? What's a trend that you see that you think we should know more about and it's common to you?
Well, it's a great question. Thank you. Well, you also know that I teach at the Yale School of Music.
Yes.
I started the Career Strategies office there, and I teach a course called Creating Sustainable Careers in the Arts. So I run this course every semester, so I have lots of data on trends. I would say one of the big trends is that musicians today want to collaborate, and a lot of them want to do something new and have a deep sense of mission around their music. I was speaking to Ed Klarman, who I believe was your teacher at the Yale School of Music, who invited me into lecture. And Ed said that when he was at Juilliard, most people were aspiring to solo careers. And that's really changed. And I think that is a big trend. That's a way people are more realistic. Musicians today understand that having a career as a soloist is a long shot. And therefore, they need other things to think about. And in fact, the way I teach career development and the way I work with clients, I always encourage people to tap into their personal values as well as their strengths and their talents. And often when you start to combine those things, a lot of musicians realize, wow, the track is supposed to be the orchestra or the solo world, but I'm not sure that's what I want to do. And I encourage people to think very carefully about, well, who are you and who are you at your best and what do you do best? And to start combining those things to create a career. And it's very empowering to be able to do that and realize that, wow, first of all, I'm really good at putting people together and working collaboratively and leading things and picking repertoire and speaking, and somebody else might be just a really, fantastic listener and the kind of person that puts together, is great at the ensemble dynamic because that person can really listen and bring out the best in people. It just depends on your natural talents. And when you do that, I think it gives you a lot more courage to go off and create something new, because you're absolutely right. There's a lot of change in the music world today, and I think musicians are realizing that in order to be able to make careers and succeed in some way as artists, you have to take control of your own career and not wait for opportunities to come to you. So I think that is probably the underlying theme of all career development for musicians today.
You were talking about values. When I first came here to talk to you, we did talk about values, and ultimately Tuxedo Revolt came from those discussions about what I felt was important and needed in the music world. As others who are watching this and they're sitting there and they sense sort of I call it the kernel of unrest or the pebble in the shoe, that something is not quite the way you want it to be, and you've said that finding your values or establishing your values is a great place to start. What advice do you have for doing just that? How do you sort of maybe take an inventory of your values and prioritize or order them?
No, that's a really great question. Well, I have a values assessment, and it's not on my website, but anybody who's a member of my newsletter community has access to my values assessment. But if you're not a member of my newsletter community, which you can easily join by just going to my website, which is myname.com, what I suggest doing is thinking of two things. Number one, a time when you felt incredibly powerful and joyful and confident, and an experience where you were really feeling at your best. And to think about what were the principles that were at play there, that were in alignment with you to make you feel so terrific. Because often when we're doing things at our best, it reflects things that are important to us. Examples of what I've heard from musicians, relationships, collaboration, generosity, loyalty, authenticity, creativity, leadership, security, Independence, autonomy, those are all, wonderful personal values. At the other end of the spectrum would be a period or an episode where you felt really angry and really betrayed, and something was really not right, and you felt in your heart that there was something really, really wrong. And then to think about what values were not being honored there.
Right.
And sort of the two extremes, because when we're at our best, typically we're in alignment with our values.
And sometimes I think we notice in the times that are a little bit darker, those remain with us a little bit more, or they maybe cut a little bit deeper, and then that's a great way to look at it and say, what was wrong, how can I fix it? I think that's that ability to say, let me try and change something, let's do something different.
Correct, and I would add to that, I think you need to do both, look at what might not have been working as well as what is working, because one of the things I really advise all creative people to do is to know what you're like at your best. I mean, there's this advanced state of being called flow, which comes actually out of a field of positive psychology. It was written by a psychologist named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi in a book called Flow, and he defined what it's like to be at your best. And he studied mathematicians and painters and musicians and skiers and ice skaters from every field. And he found that there were certain things in common. It was an experience where you were very confident and you were doing something that you felt really challenged by, but you knew you could do it. So there was a kind of a sweet spot between knowing you could do something and being motivated to do a little better, and you're so into this wonderful sweet spot that you don't notice time going by, and you have a lot of feedback, you know how you're doing, and when you can define what it's like, what you're like at flow, you can use that in a lot of ways. So what I say to people is, sure, look at your values when you were really angry and betrayed, but also, who are you at your best? Because that is amazingly motivating. And it's also incredible to be able to define that because it comes from a personal experience.
Absolutely.
So it's not as though you're making something up.